The story begins with a girl named Stella, who has just been born to a woman. In a short time, everyone finds Stella very strange because her hair is black and white. Everyone thought Stella was very peculiar and that she was cursed, which is why no one would go near her. Her mother had known about this for a long time, which is why she kept her daughter isolated from others. The day comes when Stella is about to go to school for the first time. Her mother advises her to behave well at school. We later find out that not only was Stella's hair different in color, but she also had two personalities, one that was always calm, and the other that was very aggressive and quarrelsome. However, Stella was never one to listen to anyone. On her very first day at school, she gets into several fights with boys and beats them up. There was no day when Stella didn't get into a fight. She only had a small dog friend and a black girl at school. Due to Stella's constant fighting, she was eventually expelled from school. Her mother couldn't figure out how to handle her daughter, so she decided to leave the country and move to London. Although Stella was weak in studies, she had a strong interest in fashion designing. So, her mother began preparing to move to London. But for now, she went to ask for help from a friend who lived in a mansion. Stella knew nothing about all this, so her mother told her to stay in the car and that she would come back soon with help. Her mother gave her a locket and told her not to go outside. However, Stella, being her rebellious self, got out of the car despite her mother's warning and went inside the mansion. Stella noticed that there was a fashion show happening inside, which she had been a fan of for a long time. So, she decided to sneak in to watch it. But suddenly, 3 dogs appeared, who sensed Stella's presence and began to chase her. Stella, terrified, started running away from them. Stella climbed onto the stage, and everyone was shocked, wondering who this girl was. She managed to climb a rope so that the 3 dogs couldn't bite her, but she had no idea that this act could cost lives. As she was running outside, the dogs were still chasing her, but they eventually followed her scent back to her mother, knocking her down. Stella's mother died instantly from the fall. Stella was heartbroken, blaming herself for her mother's death. The people in the mansion gathered and tried to figure out what had happened, but Stella quickly fled, not wanting to be considered responsible for her mother's death. Unfortunately, she accidentally left the locket given to her by her mother behind, which the mansion people found. Stella, now completely alone in the city, didn't know where to go and ended up sleeping by the side of the road. The next morning, she met some boys who were also orphans, having lost their parents at a very young age. Stella began following the 2 boys who lived in an old apartment. When the boys found out that Stella was like them, they allowed her to stay with them. Stella dyed her hair to look more normal, not wanting anyone to judge her based on her appearance. Many years passed this way, and Stella and her 2 friends grew up. They engaged in petty thefts, stealing wallets from people in buses and vehicles. Stella also made excellent costumes for herself and her partners to aid in their thefts. Despite her dream of becoming a fashion designer being thwarted by circumstances, she still had the skills. Together, they managed to earn a significant amount of money. But Stella often remembered her mother's wishes, who had wanted her to become a fashion designer in a major organization in London. Sometimes, these thoughts made Stella quite disheartened, as things were not turning out the way she had hoped. However, one day, Stella got a job at a prestigious organization named Liberty, which was a fashion designing company. Stella was thrilled and went in eagerly to start working, but she was later informed that she was not hired as a fashion designer, but for cleaning duties instead. Stella thought that this was just the beginning and that she would eventually get a chance to design. She gradually started dedicating time and joined the cleaning staff. However, there came a time when she lost interest in the cleaning job. She repeatedly requested her boss to give her a chance to work as a fashion designer, but her boss always refused. This frustrated Stella greatly, as she had controlled her anger for so long. One night, she was assigned a lot of cleaning work, and while doing it, she ended up in her boss's room and started drinking. Stella became very drunk and went to a plastic mannequin, applying her fashion designing tools on it. She also wrote some attractive designs on the walls of the room. The next morning, everyone gathered to see what Stella had created. Stella had drunk so much that she ended up sleeping there. Despite her mistake, the designs she created were unique and impressive. However, her boss did not understand this and asked her to leave the job. Stella pleaded for one last chance, just as a renowned fashion designer named Molly entered the scene. Molly was extremely talented, and many celebrities wore clothes designed by her. When Molly arrived and saw all the things designed by Stella, she was very impressed. Molly remarked that in all her years, she had never seen a mannequin decorated so beautifully. Seeing Stella's impressive work, Molly decided to hire her. Stella was overjoyed and immediately went to share the news with her friends. Her happiness knew no bounds, and from the next day, she started working and learning diligently at Molly's place, showcasing her talent. From the very beginning, Molly realized that Stella had significant talent. She just needed to learn a bit more. Stella's dream was finally coming true as she secured a job as a fashion designer. She gradually began to work well for Molly. One day, Stella noticed that Molly kept many safes in her home, which seemed to hold her jewelry and earnings, and there was tight security around them. One day, Stella's attention was drawn to a locket Molly was wearing, which looked exactly like the one her mother had given her years ago, before her mother had died. Stella felt that this must be her mother's locket. She asked Molly where she had gotten it, but Molly only said it was her locket, which had been stolen by a lady many years ago. Stella couldn't understand how her mother could be a thief. She needed answers quickly. Stella decided to steal the locket from Molly, so she went back to her old friends with whom she used to steal. Stella told them everything about how she needed her mother's last memento, which was now with Molly. Together, they began planning how to steal the locket. After much deliberation, Stella and her friends decided that while Molly was busy with a party, her friends would distract her attention, and they would go into the safe to steal the locket. One of Stella's accomplices went to the control room and turned off all the CCTV cameras. Meanwhile, Stella's other accomplice tried to open the safe. Stella had entered the party dressed in white, as the theme of the party was black and white. Once inside, she quickly burned her white outfit to appear more attractive and distinctive. She wore a mask over her eyes to avoid being recognized. At this moment, Stella's usual calm personality was overshadowed by her more aggressive and psychotic alter ego, the one she had suffered from in her childhood but had allowed to dominate due to her circumstances. As Stella made her way through the party, she noticed that Molly was wearing the locket around her neck, meaning her two friends were searching for it in the wrong place. Molly didn't want anyone else to be more attractive at her party, so she instructed her guards to capture Stella. However, Stella, in her psychotic state, managed to manipulate everyone around her. She was determined to get the locket by any means necessary. Stella called her friend, who brought out a dish containing many rats. When the rats emerged, Molly was terrified. Taking advantage of this distraction, Stella managed to snatch the locket from Molly's neck. She quickly handed the locket to her dog, which ran away with it. But when Molly realized what had happened, she blew a whistle, and immediately, the same 3 dangerous dogs from her past emerged. These were the same dogs that had previously been involved in her mother's death. The dogs ran at high speed and snatched the locket from Stella's dog. At that moment, Stella realized that Molly had used the same whistle to direct the dogs towards her mother, implying that it was Molly who was responsible for her mother's death, not Stella. For now, Stella left with her 2 accomplices in the car, understanding that Molly was the one responsible for her mother's death and that there might have been some personal vendetta involved. Stella now wanted to take revenge on Molly by any means necessary, so she decided to let her cruel and psychotic personality dominate, as her normal personality had not achieved anything yet. Stella was now completely transformed into her former wild and psychotic self. She was very confident and had a big plan in mind. She went to her school friend, who had become a journalist. Stella had seen her friend at Molly's party, covering the news. Stella made a single request to her friend to cover a lot of news stories that Stella would provide, which would help boost the channel's TRP. Stella first kidnapped Molly's 3 dogs with the help of her 2 friends and also brought a fashion designer to her home for a bit of assistance. Molly was a very good fashion designer and held various fashion shows, but Stella started taking over these shows one by one. She created stunning designs with the help of the fashion designer she had brought and wore them to Molly's fashion shows. This shift in attention from Molly to Stella caused Molly's popularity to wane slightly. As Stella continued to dominate the fashion shows, she began to rise significantly in the fashion world. People began talking about Stella and her amazing designs, but no one knew who this mysterious woman was. Stella even converted back to her normal personality to keep an eye on everything Molly was doing. Molly, frustrated and wanting to find out about the woman who was stealing her spotlight, instructed her workers to present their best designs to stand out. Stella, working there, showcased her skills and created impressive designs. Additionally, she had ordered some golden-colored materials from outside to embellish a dress, making it look exceptionally beautiful. Molly liked the designs, but to prevent them from being stolen, she locked them in a safe. Molly decided to reveal these dresses at her biggest show. Stella, who had no option since her designs were locked away, noticed Molly's dogs while working at home. The dogs had very attractive skins, so Stella decided to kill the dogs and make a dress from their skins. The day of Molly's grand show arrived. Molly instructed her team to open the safe containing the most beautiful dress. However, as soon as the door was opened, bees started spreading everywhere. Stella had deliberately placed bee eggs on the dress, which looked like gold to everyone. The bees then swarmed out, causing chaos and making the high-profile guests flee from the show. Meanwhile, Stella had successfully created a beautiful dress from the skins of the dogs and was showcasing it elsewhere. After the disgraceful incident, Molly finally realized who the mysterious designer was. It was Stella, who had been working at her fashion shows. Infuriated, Molly decided to take revenge. When Stella returned home, she found that Molly had kidnapped her 2 friends. Molly immediately captured Stella with the help of her men, and then took her 3 dogs and set fire to the entire place. It became clear that Stella had not killed the dogs to make her dress. She was not the type of person to take someone's life for her benefit. Molly, having set the place on fire, left the scene. Stella was left to suffocate and eventually lost consciousness. The fire continued to burn throughout the night, and Molly believed Stella would not survive. However, the next day, Stella woke up inside a house, where she found a man who was one of Molly's special assistants and caretaker. The man then revealed the entire truth to Stella. Showing her the locket, he said, "Your real mother is not who you think. The truth is, your real mother is none other than Molly." Molly was once a highly psychotic woman with a dual personality. Her mood would swing unpredictably, turning her into a psychopath. Now, her psychotic personality has completely taken over. When you were born, Molly ordered me to kill you, but I couldn't do it. Instead, I handed you over to a woman who worked for us. That woman raised you. However, on the night when that lady and Stella returned to the palace, she came to ask Molly for some money to provide a good upbringing for her son. But Molly didn't want her daughter to live, so she had her dogs kill the lady. The caretaker then opened the locket and took out a key, explaining, "Your father bequeathed all his property to you, making you the sole heir to this entire palace." Stella was shocked by this revelation. First, she went to her real family, those who had raised her through her childhood. Meanwhile, Molly had imprisoned Stella's two friends on false charges, but Stella immediately went to free them. Determined to take revenge on Molly for killing the innocent woman who had raised her, Stella began planning a major retaliation with her friends. She knew Molly was hosting a grand party soon, inviting many high-profile guests. Stella worked tirelessly, day and night, to create designer clothes and sent them to every guest's home. As these clothes were branded under Molly's name, the guests wore them. Molly was aware that Stella was not dead but was fully prepared to deal with her. She was determined to confront Stella and was confident that no one could save her this time. The party was held in the same palace where Molly had her stepmother killed. One by one, the guests began arriving at the palace. But all the guests were wearing the exact same dress that Stella had sent to their homes. These dresses looked just like Stella, which made it difficult for Molly to recognize her. Stella hid among the guests and cleverly used her thief skills to steal the small whistle from Molly, which controlled the three dogs. Stella went to the spot where her stepmother had fallen and blew the whistle twice, calling the three dogs. Molly, who followed the dogs, was unable to stop them from attacking Stella. However, they didn't bite her because Stella had the whistle. But then, Molly, behaving like a mother, approached Stella and embraced her, apologizing for her mistakes. In the next moment, Molly grabbed Stella and threw her from a height, declaring that no one could surpass her as the best designer and psycho. The most shocking part was that all the guests witnessed Molly's actions and realized how much of a killer she was. Consequently, Molly was apprehended by the authorities. Soon after, Stella appeared again, having survived the fall. Before falling, she had opened a parachute hidden in her dress, ensuring a safe landing. Finally, Stella had achieved her revenge by sending Molly to prison, avenging her deceased stepmother. Stella decided to leave her original self behind and continue living with her confident and psychotic personality, as it had given her her identity. And so, this intriguing story comes to an end.